Johnny Depp is known for his various and extravagant characters, many of them created in collaboration with Tim Burton. However, if you look for Johnny Depp in the 80s, you won't find the same diversity of roles. In fact, most of the comments you'll come across are people talking about how attractive he was. And to be fair, they are partly right.
You kidding? He's gorgeous. He has a face that looks like it was carved by angels.
But this made me wonder, was he really just that? Or maybe, from the very beginning, he was a good actor who wasn't taken seriously because of his looks. Did we miss out on the best of Johnny Depp? First of all, we need to talk about his first role on the big screen. Unlike other actors, Johnny didn't originally plan to be an actor or ended up in an endless fight with the Queen of Atlantis, having to clean an unexpected surprise from his bed. He actually wanted to be a musician, and only after his band broke up in LA, he started considering acting. Fortunately for him, he knew Nicolas Cage, who encouraged him to audition for the movie A Nightmare on Elm Street. With no prior experience, he auditioned and landed the role of Glenn Nancy's boyfriend. But how did this happen? Well, Johnny Depp's 80s look was already opening doors for him. As it turns out, the final decision was influenced by Wes Craven's daughter, as the famous director explains. I happened to have my daughter, at the time she was 13, watching the casting session, so we went home and we were going through all the pictures and went through all these handsome sort of jock types that I thought teenage girls would like. She said, "That Johnny Depp," and points to Johnny Depp's pictures, and I go, "Doesn't he look kind of sickly, kind of pale?" And she goes, "He's dreamy." Okay, Depp's appearance helped, but how did this inexperienced young actor perform in one of the most famous horror movies of the 80s? Honestly, it's not like Depp's character had many demands. He plays the skeptic character, doubting Nancy's dreams and experiences with Freddy Krueger. His character isn't the main focus either, so we don't get to see how he would handle different conflicts. In fact, when he might have shown his dramatic side during his confrontation with Freddy, the script didn't even allow for that, since he dies in less than a minute without being able to do anything, in one of the most iconic horror scenes in cinema, which I obviously won't show in this video because I don't want any strikes. Still, while he doesn't do much, I wouldn't say it's the kind of role where you think, this is a low-budget actor, please call Steven Seagal immediately to replace him. Depp does a decent job, and at this point, he was already shaping up to be Hollywood's heartthrob. A year later, he would star in Private Resort. The movie is part of the Private series, which were teen films for adults. Films that, of course, always ended up being watched by teenagers who were naturally interested in the plot and acting. Now, Private Resort wasn't exactly what audiences were expecting, and compared to its two predecessors, Private Lessons and Private School, it was a total failure. But what about Johnny Depp in this? Well, Depp and Rob Morrow played two young men spending a weekend at a luxury resort in Miami, and throughout the movie, their goal is to pick up girls while trying to avoid all the trouble that comes with it. Honestly, given its box office failure and poor reviews, I was expecting a terrible movie, but I was surprised. I won't say it's an excellent film, but it did make me laugh a few times. I was watching it while doing other things, but I ended up paying attention. So you could say I enjoyed it more than the Shrek 5 teaser trailer. Johnny Depp plays a charming young man, carefree and willing to do whatever it takes to be with a girl at that resort, even pretending to be a surgeon to win over her grandmother. This role is lighthearted and comedic, and again, it's not like the character has much to do, but Depp, in my opinion, plays it perfectly. I think that even though these were just two easy roles so far, Depp was already showing that with no prior experience, he was able to do much more than expected, and wasn't as criticized as others who venture into acting for the first time. In 1986, he appeared in two films where he had very minor roles. In Slow Burn, he plays a young man that we only see for maybe 2 minutes. I watched this movie exclusively to see Johnny Depp, and I end up disappointed because even though I knew it was a secondary role, I thought he would do more than just have two small conversations and then die at the end. In the next movie, although he also appears for only a few minutes, his role was much more significant than in the previous one, Platoon. I watched this movie many years ago and didn't remember Johnny Depp, which is understandable for obvious reasons. He only appears for a few minutes in a few shots, acting as a translator for the Vietnamese people, and like in Slow Burn, it seems he also dies. However, this wasn't originally the plan. Depp was supposed to have more scenes, but in the final edit, many of them were cut, leaving him with just a few lines. Director Oliver Stone confirmed in the commentary track of the home video release that Depp originally had a significantly larger role, which included 2 key dialogue scenes with Willem Dafoe. But if Depp had such a minor role with no real importance, why was it significant? Well, first of all, the movie was a huge success and has become a cult classic. And being part of something like that, even in a secondary role, is great for your acting resume. Especially for Depp, who, up until that moment, had only played roles of naked young men running or young men who have just one line and then die. Now, this role also had barely any lines and ended up in his death, but hey, at least it was under a renowned director. Secondly, Depp learned to speak Vietnamese, to the point of being able to interact with Vietnamese people outside the movie, according to Stone. This shows that even then, he had a true commitment with his role, something he would demonstrate in future performances. Additionally, in an interview, he acknowledged that even though Stone was a tough director, it helped him as an actor in some way.
You'd hate him in the moment, you'd hate him. But that would take you to the next level, and the next level, and the next level, you know what I mean? He just took you on that ride.
But the 80s weren't over for Depp yet. In 1987, Johnny Depp joined the series that would finally make him a nationally recognizable actor, 21 Jump Street. And if you are not that old, you might remember this name because of the movie starring Channing Tatum and Jonah Hill. That 2011 film was an adaptation set in the same timeline as the 80s series. In fact, if you recall, Depp and Peter DeLuise from the original series make a cameo near the end of the movie. Unlike the film, the series tackles quite serious topics, but unfortunately, at least as far as I watched, there's no Korean Jesus. In it, Depp plays a police officer who, because of his youthful appearance, is assigned to 21 Jump Street, a unit that infiltrates schools and colleges to uncover criminals. A long time ago, I had watched some episodes, and for this video, I finished watching up the 4th season, which is how long Depp was in the show. I wouldn't say it's one of my favorite cop productions. That spot is reserved, of course, for the other guys, but there are some episodes that I think are really good. For example, in A Big Disease with a Little Name, Depp has to protect a student with AIDS who doesn't want to leave, and Hanson, Depp's character, though hesitant at first due to the stigma surrounding the condition, ends up being the student's only friend at school. But without a doubt, my 2 favorite episodes, and the ones I think best showcase Depp's acting abilities, are Orpheus 3.3 and Swallowed Alive. In the former, we see Hanson traumatized after a criminal shoots his girlfriend, and he blames himself for not doing anything. At first, it seems like he's handling well, but as the episode progresses, we see his life spiral into chaos. He steals a recording of the incident and replays the scene hundreds of times. You can see the torment on Depp's face alone, and I think that's a great achievement for him. Because, to be honest, there are very few episodes in the show where Depp shows much emotion. Actually, if I had to criticize something, is that Depp's character is pretty flat overall. In Swallowed Alive, he's even more emotional. In this episode, Hanson has to go undercover in a prison and experience what's like to be there. Over time, he starts questioning whether what he's done as a cop, putting young people behind the bars, is really the best for them. At one point, after earning all the respect of other inmates, he breaks down and starts crying in the prison pipes. These are the episodes that I think best highlight Depp's acting, showing a dramatic side that he hadn't revealed in his previous roles. These roles soon began to bear fruit in terms of fame, as from the first season Depp stood out as a teen idol.
Who thinks Johnny Depp is cute? Maybe.
However, this wasn't something Johnny loved, so much so that after the 2nd season, he started to grow tired of that idol label and the monotony of the show.
I wanted to get fired from that show, and I tried for 2 years, and they wouldn't fire me.
Finally, in 1990, he left the show, which I think was for the best, as it allowed him to make space for true acting stars like Jonah Hill and Channing Tatum, making the show's concept more complex. Oh, and he also worked with some guy named Tim Burton. So, was Johnny Depp only good after the 90s? Well, let's say the 80s were a time of first attempts, first failures, first successes, the first time meeting Nicolas Cage, but above all, a learning process for Depp. In A Nightmare on Elm Street, he made a solid debut with an acceptable role, but he died at the end. In Platoon, despite being a secondary character, he was able to learn a lot under the direction of Oliver Stone, but he also died at the end. In Private Resort, he showcased his comedy side and didn't miss the mark, surviving at the end. Finally, in 21 Jump Street, he acted for 4 seasons, which in Depp's own words, was a kind of acting school, especially in episodes that demanded more emotional depth from him. So, in terms of acting, this wasn't the best version of Depp, clearly, but he never acted poorly. On the contrary, he gave several glimpses of the talent that would foreshadow what was to come in the 90s.